Hey friends, welcome back to Ray of All Trades. Found ourselves a Husqvarna 240 in the trash. The guy who picked it up already did a couple of preliminaries, pulled off the muffler and saw that the piston was scored on it, and bought a replacement engine for it basically off of Amazon. I think total cost of the engine was $40, $45, something like that. So, and he asked me, just go ahead and rather than trying to get that thing running, just go ahead and swap a brand new motor in it. So that's what we're going to do. It's quite dirty. Stop the piston from spinning. Whew. This thing is quite dirty. Plug doesn't look that old. These are T25s. If anybody's wondering, there's supposed to be 4 of them. It's missing one. Coil looks somewhat new. Oh, that gas smells horrible. If it wasn't for the fact that the piston was scored, the first thing I'd be doing is changing out this gas. It's amazing what ethanol gas will do when it sits, or any gas for that matter when it sits. Ethanol is just known for separating. Oh yeah, that smelled really bad. Looks like I can actually access this motor from the bottom here once I pull the handle off. Some of them, this is a whole gas tank. The handle assembly is a gas tank. I won't need to do that on this one. I'm hoping I'm gonna have to pull that. This one attaches there. That one attaches there. I want to get the clutch off of here first. So let's get the piston down to the bottom. And then we're going to fill this thing up with a rope. There we go. Let's turn this. Okay, got it under tension. It just stops the piston from moving because it's filled up with that rope there. And we're going to be turning this clockwise to get it to come off of here. Wow. All right, well, that shouldn't have come off by grabbing it. Usually you would take a spanner wrench, a chisel, whatever, and you want to smack it in that direction to take this off of here. But for whatever reason, that one just came off by my hands, making me think that somebody might have already been in here. So let's take off this cover, and I bet you got to take this cover off too. Pry that up a little bit. Yeah, had to take that off because the oiler's underneath it. T20 for this one. That washer goes under there. I was just trying to stack everything back in the same direction it came off of. Go. So oiler's off. Looks like there was a gasket on that side of the crankcase because it's a little bit recessed from this side. So basically this is lower than this. I know we need to pull off the handle, at least right here. All the handle pieces over there. There's one right here. And then there's one right here. Oh, and then I've got a throttle connection right here. I want to try to sneak it out of there. It looks like I have to pull. I might be able to take it off by taking the carburetor off, but Let's see if this is any easier. Yeah, it looks like it might be a little bit easier. Let's pull that back. So that comes off of there. We'll slide this back on for the time being. Let's get the muffler off of here. There's a lot of loose parts in this thing. I'm not the first one in here. Unless this thing rattled itself apart, which I really doubt. I told you they already figured out that the cylinder was scored, so this one makes sense. Man, it's raining good outside. I'm right on the tail end of a hurricane. It's got a little bit of scoring, but honestly, that might have been polishable. It's all right. Never seen an air filter like that before. 8mm bolts. Yeah, 8mm bolts. I'm wondering if I can leave the flywheel on. The case should separate right where the flywheel is. And if I separate it, it might stay on the crankshaft. Man, it's coming down out there. There's a screw over here. That was a really tight seam. I thought it was all one piece. There we go. All right, then we have a couple of ground wires attached to the coil. I'll tell you what, since we're going to be taking the coil off anyway, let's go ahead and get those out too. Let's see. I've got a fuel line down here for the bottom. And then one that goes to the primer, and the other one goes down into the return for the tank. All right. So I keep my parts kind of together in a fashion to where, like, I only disconnected one side of the carburetor and I disconnected one side of the primer. Then you know how it goes back together. Now it's going to be, I believe there's a new carburetor inside that box, but at least it would show you, you know, how it goes back together. And let's see, can we pull this motor out? I'm thinking I still have to pull that flywheel off. Okay. Yeah, I still got to pull the flywheel off. So, if you're doing this on your own, make sure you pull the flywheel first. Let's see if I can get this without the rope. And we got the flywheel off. All right, now the top half of the motor comes out. cylinder, spark plug primer, fuel filter, some carb gaskets, new carburetor, cylinder, new ring, piston, wrist pin, keepers. Okay, what I don't see would be a wrist pin bearing. I also don't see new crank seals, and I'm not sure what these are. I haven't found these yet. I wonder if these go inside this cylinder, because they kind of look like they fit there, right? Never seen that design before. All right, let's see. I mean, a little wear. Yeah, those guides are right here. And I don't know. Might have been salvageable. Let's start matching stuff up here. So the cylinder's facing this way. Looks like the longer, it says it has an R on it also, but the question is which way is the right side? So there's a tall side and it kind of lines up that way. If you put them in correctly, they drop right in. So there's my transfers, meaning that the gases come up the side here and come out into the cylinder up there. On a regular cylinder, they would actually be machined into the cylinder. Get this moved over. I'm guessing this is intake block, maybe intake manifold. Alright, so there's a gasket back there. Yep, they gave us one of those. Perfect. And then there is a spring. We're going to need to get this gasket off of here. Let me get a scraper and get the rest of this gasket material off of here. And I need that to be flat as much as possible. All right, not a bad fit. Okay. So that's back on there. Let's get a new piston on this thing. All right, so this side of the piston has the recess so that you can stick a tool in there. And then hopefully this just pushes out that side. Sometimes they get a little sticky. So that one just slid right out. So I see why I don't have a wrist pin bearing. It's because it's made into the crank. or the connecting rod. It's made into the connecting rod, I guess. Sorry. Go ahead and get one of the keepers installed on this thing. So grab a little pair of needle nose, grab it on that part right there, install one side, and then squeeze it together to get it installed on the other side. Just like that. And then I always have the opening facing straight up and down. All right, on this piston, there's an arrow. That arrow always faces towards the exhaust side. So if you're looking at the saw, this side right here, this would be the exhaust up here. This side over here is the side that the flywheel was on. The flywheel was on this side right here with the coil. This flywheel is tapered. The tapered side is here, meaning that the crankshaft goes in this direction, taper side is facing out. The muffler's up here means that the arrow needs to be on this side. So you can set it on there just like that. Kind of get a little bit of lubricating oil, some 2-stroke oil, and a brand new wrist pin out. Get it lubed up and slide it into the side that doesn't have the keeper on it. You should be able to look in the other side to see where it's at. Once it's installed, install your second keeper. Firm grip, and just twist it into place. All right. Sometimes it's easier said than done. And make sure that the opening faces straight up. If it doesn't, rotate it until it does. And then look very closely to make sure that that ring is all the way seated into that groove. You don't want to see those come out because they will score up a cylinder in a second. And I've seen some pretty nice saws get ruined that way. The piston has a locator pin on it right there at the very top. The ring has a shape to it if you look real closely. This side over here is facing up that way. This side over here is facing up this way. So that since the locator pin's at the top, that's the direction it has to go. If it was upside down, the ring would never close. Lubricate up the top edge here that the piston's going to slide on. Make sure that your piston ring's on the proper direction. Because if it's not, getting it back out is a real pain. It should squeeze under just like that, and it should be able to compress. Okay, I'm going to set this aside for a second while we prep the bottom half of this case, the bottom half of the motor. So you see all this right here? That's all old stale gasoline. Let's get this cleaned up. I'm just going to grab an old toothbrush and just clean this thing out the best I can. Get a lot of this loose dirt off of here. Sometimes I use a little low pressure power washer. Those usually do a great job because they get in all the little cracks and crevices and stuff. Don't have the ability of doing that one today. So I'm just going to clean it up like this. So I'll bring y'all back as soon as I think I've got something fairly clean. Right, that's somewhat, well, it's a lot better than it was anyhow. Now what I plan on doing is using a little bit of a sealer, gasoline resistant. Make sure it's gasoline resistant sealer. Let's seal up these channels. So this style doesn't have a gasket. It uses this sealer. And that was that black stuff that I was scraping off a little while ago. So what you're putting on right here is the base gasket. And if it leaks, it'll run lean. It'll probably run. It'll run lean, and usually it'll run a little bit on the fast side when it runs lean. And you won't be able to calm it down. And it'll probably last about a tank or two of gas, and then it'll be burned up. think I covered it all. I got gasket on both sides, probably a little excess here. Let's soap up the inside of the cylinder. This style does not need a ring compressor to put it in. Matter of fact, the ring compressor won't work because you won't be able to get it up inside there. So it's tapered to allow the piston center and seal up on the way. And then just like before when I said that you have to have that arrow, you want to make sure that you're putting this piston in the right direction because it'll fit both directions. You don't want to do that. Intake side, this is the exhaust side, so it's going to sit in there just like that. The arrow is right there, which means that this piston goes in just like this. Make sure. Oh yeah, it shifted on me a little bit. Okay. There we go. It should drop right in. Just gonna hold this in place while I put it in here. Set it all back down. A little bit of blue Loctite on the head. I always call them head bolts, but really it's the cylinder bolts. Make sure everything's lined up. And these should start fairly easy. Since we can access the muffler real quick, let's go ahead and get that on. I'm putting the plug in right now because I want the compression to stop, you know, the impact. We're going to take flywheel. Flywheel has a key on it. There's a little keyway on that flywheel. Make sure it lines up with the keyway on here. If it doesn't, it won't drop on there properly. But there is room to put that flywheel on and put the nut on there and not be on center. So, but anyway, that's your timing. That keyway, it's more for timing than anything else. The taper is what holds it in place, but the keyway aligns it for timing. And it's timed based off the magnets, where they are in relation to the coil. So one coil wire there. The other one gets a ground wire. Got a business card. I like the business card because if you used a feeler gauge, the feeler gauge doesn't want to bend as easy as a business card does, and you want it to be in this curved shape. Let's get the fuel line and fuel filter changed out. Man, that thing stinks so bad. All right, so fuel filter. Let's see if we can pull this out. And then I need to go find a fuel line that's that size. So y'all hold tight. Let me go grab the bag. All right, I think we have a winner. Looks about the same size. Okay. And it should have been that distance sticking up. Let's just get it somewhat close. It doesn't have to be perfect. Something like that. And on this one, this should just be my return. It should be fairly short. Doesn't need to be that long. Of course, it does need to be longer than the piece I cut off. Say right about there. For this one, we're probably going to have to cut it at an angle because it's a very tight fit for that. All right, so let's take this and we're going to cut it at a steep angle. I'm going to start it into the hole far enough that I can grab the other end of it. So this is my filter side, this is my return side. So this side right here is going to connect to that primer. This side right here is going to connect to the carburetor. We need to figure out one more fuel line, and that's this one right here. If y'all are wondering, it happens to be the short end on the primer. Let's see, should have been the short end on the primer. And then that one connects right here. Just like that. And I have a choke lever. Just matching them up one for one. Okay, this one should go over here. You know what? I think that I cut this one too short. Tell you what, I need it to be about there. We're going to do that one more time. I'm going to keep it full length. Let's pull this in, this return in. And then once it's there, I'll trim this side up here to length. I guess it's a good thing I buy these fuel lines in bulk. Just a little bit more to get past my cut. There we go. That's past the cut. Let me pull it back just a little bit. I don't know if y'all can see that or not.
The board is done if you want snacks.
All right, let's see if that fuel line comes up like that. It would be about this length right here. Let's cut that to size. Perfect. Fuel line is a little bit on the long side. Go ahead and get that dressed up. Like that. And we need a fuel filter. There's a huge barb on the end of this fuel filter. We may not be able to use this thing. There we go, perseverance pays off. And the filter should be able to fall into the bottom of the tank and rest on the bottom. It feels like it's a little bit on the long side. It's not resting properly. There's an easy way to handle that. Pull your slack until your fuel filter rests like you want it to, like that. And then I'm going to cut it to size. So you cut about that much off of it. There we go. Yeah, it's still resting on the bottom. All right, let's put the throttle lever back on. Should be something like that, hopefully. Yeah, let's make sure everything still works. Throttle moves, choke moves. Let's see, there's a spring right here that's going to So that spring needs to be on the inside. Yeah, looks like it needs to sit like that. So you push the dead man switch in, allows the throttle without it. And if the spring was on the opposite side of here, it wouldn't allow it to, it wouldn't allow it to spring. See, something like that. So, squeeze the dead man, push the throttle lever in. Don't worry about this spring at the very end here. Let's put that in like that. That like that, and then we'll put that spring on that side. Squeeze the trigger up and then let it come down. Should be like that. Now does it work? There we go. All right, all that works like it's supposed to. We still need to get starter cover back on. I found an extra screw when I was gathering other stuff. Now we're up to the oiler. By the way this oiler works, as the crank is spinning, it's spinning this little gear that's right here. It's turning this gear right here, which has a shaft in here that has a flat spot. And as it's turning, it's working like an impeller, I guess, or a pump. It's pulling oil out of the tank, which comes out right here. This pump pulls it up the tank and then sends it up this groove that comes up through here and ends up going to the bar. So the oiler's not working. The first thing is almost always that the bar has a spot on it and it's plugging up that really, really small hole that lines up with this hole. That's almost always the case. But if you wanted to get into the oiler to see, like you've already done all that, whoops, y'all almost let me forget. How come nobody reminded me? I know, everybody was yelling at the screen saying, you forgot, you forgot. Okay, this little gasket goes right there. You can pull the pump apart, clean it, make sure everything's spinning like it's supposed to. Like no gears have stripped, it's all full of dirt or something like that. Anyway, there's my oiler. Now this metal plate goes next. This right here and friction is what holds this thing in place, and then of course the bar holds it on. Make sure that it seats on there tight. So like right now it's kind of loose. So what I'm going to do is take this tab and I'm going to bend it down. Still could use a little bit more. Grab my hammer here. My hammer and my chisel. There we go. Now it's on there. Then we had a washer, right? Then we had the clutch, drum, and then the clutch. By the way, this thing needs to be greased. There's bearings in here. And this is actually how and when it gets lubricated, is when you pull this apart. Stuff it with rope. The motor turning should tighten this thing up. But plug back in. Like I said, we have a gasket for this, so let's go ahead and put that on. All right, I'm gonna keep an eye out for a bar and chain for this thing. Let's make sure it pulls fuel. Oh yeah, pulled fuel great. Let's see if we can start. The good news is it stopped raining. All right, let's see. Full choke, primed up. Let's see, 2 pulls with the choke out. It says prime 6 times. Pull with the choke out, start it, choke in, and then pull some more? I don't know. That kicked over. Let's go ahead and move that choke in. I heard something funny going on. Not a bad little rebuild for this Husqvarna 240. Seems to run pretty decent. I'm going to test it with a bar and chain as soon as I can find one. Hope y'all got something out of the video. Really appreciate you hanging out. I'll catch you guys on the next one.